Courage, Tom and Dhaval run a company called Courage. They are the hottest agency in Canada. I wouldn't say you're a startup. But I think you have had 2 years of like ramping to start this company. So in so many ways, I think this is going to be such an inspired presentation for you guys to learn a little bit about their journey and what they think about this interesting topic. So I will bring you both up to the table. Do we have a second mic, or are they going to have to show that we have a second mic? Okay, great. I'll give you mine.
Perfect. Hello? Check, check, check. Is this working? Perfect. Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Tom. Excited to be here. Excited to learn from you all. Before we get into our content, I just wanted to get one thing out of the way from the outset, and it's this. So what Dhaval and I are going to be talking about for the next 10 minutes or so, we're not going to be looking too far into the future. We're mostly going to be focused on where we're at today and where we envision ourselves over the next kind of 3 to 5 years. And the reason why we're not going to look too far into the future isn't because two ad guys can't predict where AI will ultimately play out down the road. Of course we can. The reason why is because I think we all know where AI ultimately plays out in the future. And it's here, of course. It's in a battle for our survival against Skynet. I wasn't sure how that was going to land, so here we go. Bringing us back to the present, Alex touched on this a moment ago. There's one question that's very much at the forefront of our minds for anybody who's working in a creative industry right now. And it's at the forefront of our minds because the answer to that question could significantly shape, the future of our creative industries, and perhaps closer to home, it could significantly shape the livelihoods of a lot of us working in these creative industries. And that question is this: will generative AI replace human creativity? What do we think? No? Well, we think the answer is yes. Actually, we think the answer is yes and no. So I suppose we're in agreement on that front. But let's start with the yes part. So we think of advertising as a creative industry, but if we're being truly honest, I think we'd admit that a lot of the work that we do and a lot of the things we produce isn't actually all that creative. In fact, if we're being really, really honest, I think we'd admit that a lot of the things that we produce in advertising, most of it isn't in fact all that creative. Did we lose the slides? We're working out all the kinks for all the subsequent speakers. Okay. Yeah, I think we would all admit that most of it isn't creative. And the reason being is that most of it is this. Most of the work that we produce in our industry is banner ads. And there's nothing inherently wrong with banner ads at all. Some of us might look down our noses at them. But typically they play a pretty valuable role with broader marketing mix, but the fact is they're not particularly creative for the most part. What they are, however, is big business. It's a huge industry. In fact, this year alone in the US, big brands will be investing over $10 billion in performance marketing, right? So that's stuff like banners and emails and push notifications. And, too far. The fact that it is such big business and the fact that it is such a huge potential revenue source for agencies is probably / definitely why this is happening. Now, for those of you that aren't super familiar with the ad world, the reality is the vast majority of agencies around the world are owned by 5 big holding companies. And these 5 big holding companies have made very clear that their big bet for the future of our industry is in artificial intelligence. And for them, it actually makes a tremendous amount of sense. Big brands these days, they typically don't just make 1 or 2 ads, but they're often making dozens, if not hundreds of versions of their ads. And AI is on the precipice of automating the versioning of all these ads that many big brands require. So to bring this to life, I actually kind of wanted to give it a try. And we're going to use ChatGPT to do it. And these are all real results that I pulled a couple days ago. So we're going to start by pulling up an ad. In fact, we're going to start by pulling up one of the most famous ads, one of the most iconic ads of all time. So ChatGPT, show me the famous Volkswagen lemon advertisement. So that's pretty close. Most of you are probably familiar with the original version of this ad. Now, because we know that we're going to want to make multiple versions of every make and model of this vehicle, let's start by just turning the car yellow. So please make the car yellow. That again looks pretty good. Nice job, ChatGPT. So we know that all the provinces across the country have different price points that they put their vehicles at. So because we're here in Toronto, let's take this ad and let's add the Ontario price point to it. So here we go. Now we have a pretty nice looking ad. We've got our yellow car and we've got our Ontario MSRP at the bottom. Now how about we try translating it into French? There we go. Not bad. It's kind of doing okay. We're actually getting a little bit closer to the original with the picture of the vehicle. Not too bad. And now, because we know that print is a dying medium, let's actually turn this into an Instagram post. Okay. So the text is getting, whoa. Hey.
Hello? Hello?
That was weird. And I'm super loud right now.
And I didn't do that time, okay? I just want for the record, it wasn't me.
Okay, are we good? Here we go. That's not bad. Yeah, so this is actually a pretty decent looking Instagram ad. Again, nice job. So I did all of that in about 20 minutes or so using a tool that wasn't specifically designed for that purpose. So what I hope you've taken away from this is that AI is actually exceptional at reliably and efficiently making versions of things.
But give me the clicker and hold on, Tom. But here's what it's not so good at yet. Okay, that's the important part. That coming up with the original, the iconic ad that was different from everything that was happening at that time, that had never been done before. Yeah, I can do a lot of things, of course, but it is still iterating, right? That's what it's doing. It still can make the first one. And here's what it might actually never be good at, is this. When you see things and work and things that make you feel something, that make you connect at a visceral, at an emotive level, that is innately human. And I think that is what AI can't do, right? And why is that important? Because there's actually two types of advertising. There's advertising that drives conversion, and there's advertising that builds brands. And they can be very different things. The stuff that drives conversion, you check out a shirt and then you see Instagram posts about it for the next 3 months of your life. That's that, right? It's contextual, it's timely, it's personalized, it's urgency, all of those things, right? These ads are designed to win over your head, and they frankly do a great job of that. But advertising that builds brands, it has a different task. It's got to win over your hearts, right? And how does it do that? It does that I'm going to walk you through some of those ways that how great brand advertising does that, win over your hearts. And none of those things actually, as you'll see, AI is particularly good at. The first amongst them is actually connecting with culture. Now, AI is great at remixing things. A few months back, this was going around, superheroes and 80s dive bar. Those are cool images. I remember watching that being like, man, I'd like to hang out at that bar with those guys. But for brands, again, the magic lies really in identifying what are those two inputs that you want to bring together to connect in culture, right? And usually, at least what we've had great success doing is we find the things that make your brand special, what's your DNA, connecting that with things that actually matter to your audience, the stuff that's happening in culture, right? And what that innately requires, by the definition of it, is human intelligence and intuition, right? Intuition, which is formed, again, by human lived experiences. I'm going to share a couple of examples of some of our work that we've done about interesting connections, right? So Street Fighter 6 and Colonel Sanders. I mean, there's no real connection there, right? AI would never come up with that. But a human did. He's sitting right there. But he came up with this connection where he went like, oh, Street Fighter 6 is the biggest game being launched, and they have this thing called recipes where they first time allow you to actually create your own characters. What if we created a recipe, because Colonel Sanders' recipe, 11 herbs and spices, that's what he does. We created a recipe that for Colonel Sanders, shared that with people, got them to play with Colonel Sanders and post that on their Twitch streams to win free combos when they do combos. AI would never come up with that. You know what I mean? And that is a very successful campaign covered by every tech blog and so on. Here's another one related to AI. The connection pieces are a chocolate bar, one of the world's oldest chocolate bars, and an AI text prompt. Completely different worlds. It started with one of our creative's dads was at a Google conference, and it was a Google DeepMind study where they were talking about how human prompts like take a breather and summarize Shakespeare's play delivered far better results than when he just said, summarize Shakespeare's play. Interesting. He calls one of my creative guys, his son, and he says, hey, I saw this thing. I don't know if you can use it in your work and stuff, but there it is. And he goes like, I wonder if it works when you say have a break and do that. Have a break, the iconic tagline for Kit Kat. Bam, there's the connection. Incredibly successful campaign that was covered like all over the world. So again, a human connection, right? And I'll very quickly go over this one. This was, again, it's a billboard. It was incredibly viral, the most viral billboard that happened during the playoffs run so far. It's an ongoing campaign where, AI would never come up with this billboard. If he said, hey, come up with a billboard for Skyscanner outside the crypto arena, it wouldn't do this. What the human did was said, hey, 1, 2, 3 Cancun, if you watch basketball, you know what that's about. When a team loses, the idea is like, hey, they're all going to Cancun. So they came up with this idea to troll the opposing team, which was Dallas to Cancun. And of course, the home team loved it. The opposing team absolutely hated it. They started making their own billboards after they won the series, and now it's taken on a life of its own, and the campaign is continuing. So that's the first part, right? Making those connections. The second part that, that we believe humans are just innately better at is unlocking human truths. Most of the best work, whether it's ads, whether it's films, we love them because they make us feel seen. They somehow make us feel that, hey, you get me, and that is usually the connection point. And this can be funny, it can be sad, it can be inspiring, and all of those things. But the brands we fall in love with fundamentally are brands that make us feel something, right? And that usually, again, starts with finding, what's a universal human truth, or at least just a human truth, you know what I mean? And let's share some examples of that. You're not you when you're hungry. We've all seen these ads with Joe Pesci and Betty White, and they're incredible, and we love them, we laugh at them, but we connect with them because they're true, right? And that came from a basic human experience. And again, I don't think AI would come up with that tagline. Or greatness is scary until it isn't. We've seen this campaign for the Olympics many years ago. Find your greatness, again, a great example of what human experience needs to bring to the table. I love this one personally. It's an ad for Spotify, right? Like there's so many tech features and so much they could have talked about, but this beautiful ad, dramatizes this moment when when you get somewhere where you're going, but the song is amazing and you kind of have to sit there and let it play out. We've all done that, right? I see lots of nodding heads. That again, that's not something I can do, right? And again, the beauty of these truths are again like they're so simple. But they're not immediately obvious, and that's what makes them good. We always say this at my agency, that the best ideas are always right under your nose. You know what I mean? Like they're right there, and you got to sniff them out. You can't always see them; you got to sniff them out. And AI is very good at analysis, but it's not very good at insight, right? It can calculate, it can do the pieces but the insight, at least is the way we describe it in our business, it's not very good at that. And finally, the last thing, I'm rushing through this because I did to Tom what I did to Tom earlier, but breaking new ground, right? That's AI, and I've seen this, it can make, a decently okay episode of Seinfeld. I think there's a Twitter account where they actually share plots of it, and it's actually kind of okay. Can't make Seinfeld. You know what I mean? You need a human for that. Imagine pitching a show. It's a show about nothing, right, to studio execs. If AI wrote that as a pitch, I don't think it would fly. It needs Jerry to do that. And great advertising, again, is again, disruptive, and it lands because it hasn't been seen a million times before, right? It's fresh, it's innovative, and it's unexpected. AI can't do that. In fact, most humans can't do that. And, this is a staggering number. I hate the study that it came from, but it's 89% of ads are forgotten. Like they're completely not, they don't land. And most advertising isn't that what we just talked about, right? So here's the end thing, right? If you're making boring, just easily replicable, iterative work, the future is not looking very good. It's going to be tough. But if, your creativity is unexpected, it's original, it's insightful, innovative, all those big fancy words, there are still no prompts for that. So we're back to the question that Tom posted earlier. Will generative AI replace human creativity?
Yes.
And no. That's us.
So, amazing, right? Yeah, AI will replace bad ads. AI will never replace creativity. Completely agree. Questions? We'll take 2 questions from the audience. Any questions for the team from Courage? Yeah.
Hey, I'm Dan. Question is, how do you use generative AI in your current workflows, mainly to the gent who came up with the idea in the first place? How do you use it day to day?
Mainly to the guy that came up with the street fight idea? I mean, I think we use it a lot of ways in our day-to-day work. Like for me, I lead the strategy team at Courage, and I often use it as inspiration. If I'm talking about a topic or a category that I'm not super familiar with, I'll often plug a question into ChatGPT, and I'll usually spit something back that's a bit more bespoke than what I would get off Google. I know we also often use it to create images that you couldn't pull from like a stock photography website. So if we want to visualize something for our clients, but we don't actually have kind of a picture of that exists previously, we'll just make it, and that'll be enough to kind of get the concept across. So we are using it every day, and then we find it helpful for a lot of our sort of creative and strategic ideation.
Amazing. Any other questions? Yep.
As we know that AI is really good to increase efficiency and bring productivity in all of the marketing things that we do. What is your advice on how we can be one step ahead? Because anybody who I feel is mediocre in the sense is not doing a lot with their copywriting or is not taking that one step ahead, they are going to be replaced because that kind of job can be done by AI because it's spitting out those responses. What is your advice to marketers in a way to use their creativity to be one step ahead of AI, I guess?
Yeah, it's a good question. And it's funny, Alex talks a lot about that, at least in a conversation we've talked about it, right? It comes down to, the 2 E words, right? There's efficiency and there's effectiveness. And frankly, what you have to do is you have to translate it to, the work, to build brands. Again, like that's what we talked about, is it's got to be effective. And sure, there's more efficient ways to do it, but that necessarily doesn't make it. And that's always the equation, that at least you can play up in the brand world.
Yeah, the advice is if you're running a company and you're thinking about advertising, never start with efficiency. You always have to start with what's effective and what's smart and what's cool, because I think you made the point, 89%, I would say it's higher. Most ads people don't know or remember. And test yourself by just closing your eyes and thinking about an ad that you saw today. Most of you can't remember one. Anyway, I want to thank you, Courage. Amazing, awesome presentation. Okay.